We're live. Happy spring, happy Appalachian spring. Here's what it looks like. Obviously, lots to talk about. On Saturdays, I do something called All Business, but that's not really my vibe. I'm like not a Bloomberg guy. Um, in fact, I would suggest this week, if you have a few minutes, like right at the market close, listen to Bloomberg Radio or listen to or see it online. They don't know what to say. So, but let's all calm down. So I like this leaves of grass thing. I may run with this. Like, it's real bad, people. It's real bad. And I'm the guy who's been telling you for 5 years, you're going to wake up in the Gone with the Wind and all that happy horse shit. So I guess this is like the going back to Terra moment. And that means different things for different people. It doesn't mean sell your house and leave away. So I'm going to talk about a couple things that I think are pragmatic, you know, cautioned, reasonable reactions to what's going on. Um, yeah. So, what do we want to start with? Uh, it appears that Netanyahu is dead, and even those AI videos that came out, there's one where he's appearing to do, uh, being interviewed and doing a question and answer kind of a thing. There's something about it that just catches your eye. I don't know how this works, but the human eye is so sensitive to things that are analog and real and things that are digital and fake. And but this video, I posted it as a note. Supposedly was posted on Chinese TV. I don't think that they have any reason to pile on and put something up that's fake. And I do believe that the Chinese could, in fact, hack into the technology of Israel. Just remember, there's 15 million Jews in the world, and there's 1.5 million Chinese, 1.5 billion Chinese. Just saying. This goes back to my 7 million people taking on 7 billion people. That's not going to work. So it's a real violent looking video too, and like the voices and the sounds sound awful, and then there's like a collapse and there's an explosion afterwards, which is how like bunker busters work. So not a big fan of Netanyahu, and um but I think the world's a better place without him. It's a reasonable thing to say. Maybe we could have done it some other way. But he's gone. I think he's gone, and I think there's going to be a reckoning at some point that Israel's going to have to own up to that, and that is a terrible headline, right? I think there's a complete blackout of like any videos coming from Israel, and even worse than the 12-day war, the airport is just, from some things I see and you see on social media. I mean, how hard is it to hit an airport? You just put a hole in the fucking runway and it's done. Then there's the refinery. There's only one refinery in Israel. You blow out the refinery and you got 15, 20 days of gasoline and jet fuel and diesel fuel left. These are really, really serious matters. And the financial markets, again, not to pile on, the financial markets don't know what to think. The Bloomberg people of the world live in places where they don't see people planting corn and driving coal trucks and the coal mines. By the way, remember the guy that came out of the Somerset County mine? Yeah, number 9. He lives right there, right there. Mark Pasternak. By the way, do you know that when they're in those mines, you know that the seam is only about 40 inches. Those guys that dig that coal out are on their knees all day. Like this, people just don't know the realities of like what energy really is and where it comes from and so forth. So along those lines, just to remind you, the biggest gas field in the world is the Pars field. Israel attacked it supposedly without any conversation with Trump. I wonder if it wasn't targeted by AI. And in retaliate, and Qatar, whatever you want to call it, and Iran share this weird little, guess what do they call that? An archipelago? This thing that sticks out into the Persian Gulf. And Israel bombed the Iranian side, so the Iranians bombed the other side. And now the biggest gas field in the world has been about 15 to 20% disrupted. The second biggest gas field in the world is right under my ass. It's, as I like to say, it's the Marcellus. So that's interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about finance because all this horror about things, sometimes people want to do things that I think that they should avoid. Now, I want to talk about like, okay, if it's this bad, they're a genius. What should we do? The first thing is, I don't think people should be afraid of banking. Don't let people get you so worked up that you like go close your checking account and stuff. That's not the point of this. The banking system is fine because I can always print enough money to cover your deposits. There isn't any money in the FDIC fund, but let's all calm down. But seriously, your checking account's probably fine. The ATM machine is fine, but it's not crazy to have $5,000 in the basement somewhere or in the, frozen fish sticks or whatever to have cash on hand. Don't be over the $250,000 limit. A lot of people got caught on that in 2008. Money market funds are not FDIC insured, although the Fed did back them during 2008. But if you're going to be significantly in a money market fund and you're a little spooked, you can look and you can find government-only funds, U.S. Treasury bills, just like Warren Buffett has like $350 billion in T-bills. They're just short-term Treasury bills. But don't be over the FDIC limits. Don't be silly. If you are over the FDIC limits or you run a business and you have $7 million in one bank and you're like, well, what do I do? Just call them and say, tell your investment guy to put those all in 90-day T-bills and just stack them 30, 60, 90. You know what I mean? Just get a big inventory of T-bills, just like Warren Buffett. Don't be a hero. Just do it like Warren Buffett. Okay? Of course, everybody wants to talk about gold and silver. Shanaka, who's like the god of Substack, I don't know how he writes these things. Like every hour, there's like the breaking fucking news that's better than everybody else's. Anyways, Shanaka has an article up about the purchasing of real gold bullion in China. The big banks, the JP Morgans of China, so to speak, every morning come out and say, we have this much physical gold available. It sells out in 60 seconds. That's how tight the gold market is. And most likely it's being bought for reserves for the state, the People's Republic of China, and or their central bank, which are sort of the same thing. To that effect, you can ask yourself, well, do I want to own gold in the ETF, the GLD, or do I want to own gold in my hand or bury it in the backyard or whatever? And those are questions you're going to have to ask yourself. Could the ETF break? Yes, it could. Meaning, if everybody learns that gold in Shanghai is $7,000 an ounce, and the GLD ETF says 4,800, that could break, and then they would say you're not getting your money, and then you don't really own gold. At the moment you want the gold, right? At the moment the price goes discontinuously up, they would just close it. and say, we're just going to give you cash back for where it was and you won't participate in the up. So people like Mark Faber, who I listened to for many years, they're always like, there's only one way to own gold, and that's in your hand. And same way with silver. So right now, SLV, I think, is at what, 70 or something like that? But if you call the US Mint and want to buy a coin, it's 170. So those Wall Street based prices they're just not accurate. And the same thing's happening in oil for slightly different reasons. Oil's at 93 or 97 or 114. I forget where it was on Friday's close. But out in the ocean, it's 160. Part of that is that, a sheep here is worth $400, and in West Texas, it's worth $330. Because there's a million of them in Texas, and there's not very many of them here. I'm just going through these things. Just a lot of times when you start talking about this, people get like in panic mode. And I'm just like, let's all calm down and just, see where you are in life. Do you want to, over the years, people are like, should we sell our hunting cabin? We never go there. And I go, well, would you want to have it if something bad happened? And they go, oh, yeah, absolutely. So here, my theme today, leaves of grass. My theme today, when you hear all this stuff going on, instead of trying to be a hero, this isn't like Warren Buffett time. Warren Buffett does Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is like Nick Saban. Don't try to be Nick Saban. Don't try to be a superhero. You'd be better off right now saying, what do I want to own? What do I feel comfortable with? For example, if you're like, well, I don't want to completely sell out of stocks. Okay, well, look at PIC. It's all the commodities. It's all the mining stocks. There's going to be inflation, people. You can't knock out the Pars field and the Straits of Hormuz. And it doesn't have the Federal Reserve is over. It has Jay Powell has nothing to do with anything anymore. If he cut rates, he would blow himself up. If he raised rates, he's cut. The fucking Ayatollah now has more control over inflation than Jay Powell and Donald Trump do. And if you don't believe me, they just launched 2 missiles at Diego Garcia. Go look at that, where that is on the map. The Iranians launched 2 missiles into the South Indian Ocean. I'll just pile on here for a minute. Had they hit that island, the whole fantasy of American global dominance would just vaporize. Just as an aside, because I make all this content and I babble about this, a pretty good little analogy for what's going on, if you like MMA, is McGregor. And I love McGregor, and he's, considered even one of the best boxers of all time. Mike Tyson said that. But there's this Habib, I think he fought him 2 or 3 times. And McGregor can almost hit him whenever he wants, like Muhammad Ali or something like that. And as soon as they go to the ground, he can't compete with Habib. My point is, American Western technology is a little bit like McGregor. Like, we have the jets, and they're starting to hit the jets with missiles. The F-35s, I think there was another one hit today. And this idea that they flew some sorties over a country the size of Alaska and have blown up all the missile sites, like, does that make any sense to you? Does that make any sense? That in 14 days they neutralized all of the tunnels where the rockets come out of? No, it's Mickey Mouse. So, I think my theme to you is, don't be a hero. There's nothing wrong with going to Costco and saying, I'm buying $500 worth of cans and pasta and rice and stuff. You're not a weirdo. You're not a prepper. You're just keeping your shit together. It may even be something like, your neighbor or your grandma or something happens and like they have to lean into you a little bit. It's not this hair on fire. So just get to the place that you're comfortable with. I think that's really important. So that if shit really does go bad, like what would you do if remember 9/11? I think what we're headed up to is something that's going to feel a lot like 9/11. And I was a young stockbroker with a kid and one on the way in 3 weeks. And we didn't work for 4 days. Like we went in and watched ESPN and shit. Like you couldn't place a trade, you couldn't buy a mutual fund, you couldn't do anything. And clients were calling in and like, "You all right, Jimmy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think we're going to be all right." And you're not getting paid. When you're a broker, you don't get paid. There's no salary. No, you go in and turn on the computer every month, and there's a big goose egg looking at you. And your cute little kids are home eating the Cheerios and drinking the milk. Which leads me to like, if that happened, are you comfortable with what you own? That's my big punchline for you on a Saturday in front of my dad's barn. Or you don't have that stupid thing. Well, I have the S&P 500. It's the S&P 500 is maybe the biggest, how do I want to say it? Like false sense of security. Just I own everything, so it can't go wrong. Really, right now with $150 oil in the ocean, it should at least be below GDP. In other words, the whole stock market's at 200% of GDP. It should be at 100% of GDP. In fact, in the 1980s, if oil jumped to 150 and like they're talking about blowing up Carg Island, it would be at 50% of GDP. Follow me? So be comfortable with what you own. What else do I want to talk about? Just real quick. You might feel better about things. You might. You don't have to take this. Sometimes people they don't want to live in this stock market world anymore. And they feel like when I started Bruno, I went to see like one of my last clients, one of the last time I called on people before I started doing this. And the guy had just sold a house in Nantucket for, I think, $800,000, $900,000. And he said, Jimmy, I got like 700,000 left. He said, why don't you come over on Sunday night and you and I and the wife can sit around and have a glass of bourbon and talk about it. So I sat down and his lovely wife. And I said, well, here's something you could do. Why don't you take $50,000 and put it in cash and put $50,000 in Ethereum? And he and I had spent a lot of time talking about Ethereum. And put the rest of it in an annuity and wait 5 years and turn on the income. Okay, and then I think she said, well, what would that mean? And I said, well, you'd get $5,300 a month for the rest of your life. She said, how much? She said, a month. I said, yeah, a month. No stock market. I said, no stock. I said, all our risk would be in Ethereum. And I think I'm following this enough to know, for example, the transactions being made right now with the oil in China are operating off of Russia's Ethereum-based stablecoin. You mean Ethereum? No, it's not trading Ethereum. And this is what I've tried to tell you for 5 years, what blockchain really is. Yeah, the coin goes up and down, the ETH goes up and down, but the blockchain system is growing not as fast as AI, but again, we just started trading oil in something other than US dollars, and it's trading on Ethereum. So, she couldn't believe it. Like, she just stood there stunned for like the rest of the conversation. And I was like, "You guys are real fit." I said, "What do you like to do?" She's like, "We go hiking, go out west and go hiking." I said, "Okay, you're going to live a long time and you're going to need that $5,300 because you may live to be 99." She's like, "Yeah, you're right." So there's a little anecdote. I'm not even going to do the thing where this is not investment advice. It's clearly not investment advice. This is a podcast. Another thing I wanted to say about the politics. Um, the only thing more terrifying than $150 oil and a billion people aren't going to get natural gas is that the Trump administration, which is really the which is really like the Epstein administration. This is how they talk about it overseas now. Like Alexander Dugin talks, he said, "We're fighting the Epsteiners." Or other people say Team Epstein. And Americans are really having a hard time realizing that there isn't like the American government and then there's some bad shit going on the side. The Epstein is the federal government. And they are trying to push through legislation that would make it impossible for states to have their own legislation to control and regulate AI. There's really not a lot of people on the internet that will say this to you. That is more dangerous to the American people and our way of life and our Constitution than the $150 barrel oil. We can figure it out. It's a wealthy place we live in. You know, there's natural gas under me, there's coal, there's wood, there's whatever. And then we'll hit this tomorrow at noon as usual. We're going to do a thing tomorrow on theology and theocracy and theocracy and theology. If you want to prepare for that, go watch the movie Singularity, The Singularity. It's the book. It's a movie about the book written by Kurzweil on the singularity. This is like a cult-like book that the Silicon Valley sort of plays with. It's an easy thing to watch. You can watch it with, your grandma. You can watch it with your kids. It's actually a good way to peer into what these people believe in and what they think. They are trying to completely take over the United States, lock, stock, and barrel. Like, there will be no resistance. There'll be no opposition. They will use anti-Semitism to patrol all, and they specifically mention Substack. You can go look at the article. I think I posted it on Zero Hedge. Once this happens, all political communication is subject to the censorship of Palantir and Oracle and TikTok. The whole mechanism becomes, how do I want to say it, the legal playground for the Palantir system, which, remember, is a kill chain. Okay, we're not in the UK, like 10,000 people a year are imprisoned for things they put on social media. That's what they want to do here. It's worse than that. Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL just said we need to use tactics like the Israelis who murdered Hezbollah with technology using AI. Jonathan Greenblatt said that in public. And I don't know why I'm the only guy that talks about this. Not Ian Carroll, not Tucker Carlson. I mean, there's a few people I bump into. Nobody really sees it as like an all-pervasive political coup or junta or whatever you want to call it. And that's what 2 or 3 years ago, I said, Donald Trump was not shot in the ear by a 223. I did it on live, and of course, TikTok immediately took it down. And whenever they take something down, that's the thing that upsets them because that's the truth. So the Chinese just put the video up of Netanyahu, and Twitter took it off. In Europe and the United States, they immediately took it off. It's obviously true. I mean, if it wasn't true, they could just say that's AI. No, when it's true, they take it off. And then you go watch MSNBC and they go, well, that's a horse wormer. That's just for worming horses. You know what I mean? From COVID, ivermectin. So we'll do that tomorrow. Okay, genius. What are we going to do about it? So, people get real worked up and they want to, send a letter to your congressman. Do you think your congressman gives a fuck about your letter? About your email or whatever? They don't care. They're much more frightened of AIPAC. But what is the art of the possible here? The Team Epstein is a Gestapo. It's a series of gangsters operating at different levels. Gangsterism, sex trafficking, that kind of thing. Remember in The Godfather, Hagen? Yeah. Tom Hagen goes out to see the mayor or whoever the MGM guy was, and he has a little girl. And the Godfather says, is that thing about the little girl true? And he goes, yeah, it's true. So even back then in the 70s, in reference to the 40s, they were talking about pedophilia. Follow me? This isn't just something that happened with Epstein. This is something that is just endemic. And so there's like this bottom sex dungeon stuff. There's the Ivy League. There's Victoria Nuland and Alan Dershowitz and Noam Chomsky, for Christ's sake. There's Wexner and the limited brands and the corporations. There's the mega group. Go look up the mega group. There's big corporations, private equity. And you just keep going on like this. And this whole thing is operating together. And then, of course, the Rothschilds. Even Wexner said in his deposition, he said, yeah, when I met him, he said he worked for the Rothschilds. So all the conspiracies are built into this Epstein thing. How do you confront a Gestapo, a gangster operation? Well, they have something called the RICO statutes. And, we could create a PAC and raise money and hire attorneys and stuff. What I'm suggesting is something much more subtle and I think much more effective, is just sort of casually just start discussing this with people. What do you mean? What do you mean? Well, they're operating in New York. Jared Kushner and Lutnig, they operate in New York. What's his name's in Ohio. They have a thing in New Mexico. I'm sure that the whole thing pervades all 50 states. And the guy to lead the charge is right here in Pennsylvania. It's Josh Shapiro. It's perfect. He's an attorney general, prosecuted the Catholic Church for pedophilia, got a settlement with the big pharmaceutical companies. That kind of, remember, Lincoln was a lawyer. He was a country lawyer. If you watch that movie about Lincoln that Spielberg did, he's part of the mega group, by the way, you can see that Lincoln is just constantly thinking in legalistic terms. You know who else is like that? Linda? Putin. Putin is a powerful legal thinker. That's why all these people, do you remember the whole coup thing? The Wagner Group comes back into Russia, like literally the mercenaries. By law, they're not allowed to operate in Russia. So they have this fake coup. Everybody that speaks English on the fucking internet and the cable TV and everybody like, there's a coup in Russia. Putin's going down. I'm like, are you guys 12? They brought in the Wagner Group, had a fake coup, watched all the telecommunications to see if anybody bid on it, and they went and arrested them, and they're in fucking Siberia, and an hour later, the coup was off. Like, nobody has any, depth to their thinking, The RICO thing, I think this is going to happen one way or the other over the next generation. This is like fourth turning shit. This is what's going to have to be done to roll up all this, right? And the reason all this shit is coming out now like a dump, like why wouldn't they have destroyed this, right? If the government and the FBI and the CIA and the spooky people are all, why wouldn't they just destroy it all? Because they're dumping this now while the war starts and while they turn on the new system. They don't call it the Great Reset for nothing. Are you saying all of this is one big conspiracy? No, you don't need a grand unified. I mean, you could go like JFK got elected because of the mob, then the mob did this, and then this, and you could pretend like you understand it. You don't understand it. We don't understand it. JFK was assassinated. It's a complicated thing. Cuba's complicated. Vietnam's complicated. LBJ is complicated. On and on and on. But yes, those things overlap. But I think if America's going to survive, and there is a scenario where America doesn't survive, and they would like nothing more than to see America fall apart and steal everything. They would very much like to turn America into Palestine. They would very much like to make all opposition terrified of them, including me. Alex Karp openly says that we're going to go to war with Russia and China using AI. I mean, that's scarier than Epstein. That's scarier than some big Rothschild thing with children and eating people. And who's that scary not Abramovich, that crazy, ugly woman who makes that horrible art with like people being eaten and shit. Mm-mm. Alex Karp is the most dangerous person on the fucking earth. Rico. Like, just casually go to your, I mean, I could go to the Republican one here in Somerset County, or I could go to the Democrat one and be like, just throw it out there and see what happens. I like to do this to people. Maybe we should like push for like a RICO investigation of the Epstein files and it's any contact that they've had here in Pennsylvania. You know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to go, what? I like doing shit like that. But it's a very calm, collected approach to something that is terrifying. And the reason it's terrifying is they want it to be terrifying, and they want you to be traumatized, and they want you to live in this perpetual, oh my God, what are we going to do? Dopamine, cortisol, nightmare thing. This is the point where I usually stop and pull out of my pocket some sort of Civil War reference. And I got one for you. I think it's the Battle of Pittsburgh. It's not Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's the one that's like in, I think along the Missouri River or the Mississippi River. I forget which. Maybe the Ohio River. There we go. And Grant crosses it. He's headed down south to kick ass and take names. And there's this curve, sort of like the Straits of Hormuz. And he crosses it and he's surrounded by the river. And he's a big army, like half of he's like 30,000 troops. And there's another 30,000 troops coming and another 30,000 troops. So he has like 100,000 troops, but he's only crossed with 30,000. And the Confederates see what's happening and go, we got to hit him now. And they hit them hard and fast, and they're unsuspecting. You can imagine you come off these boats and you're, having like drinking your canteen and shit, and you look up and Jesus Christ, the fucking enemy's coming like 100 yards away. They almost got completely overrun, like disoriented. People are running, trying to jump back in the river, get across, whatever. Get the joke. So they sort of, the first couple waves of it, they like are able to hold back. And I've told this story a couple times, but I like telling it because I even like to tell it to myself. So there's a nice thing on like Amazon Prime or something about this, about Grant. And he just walks out with a cigar. Fucking people are lying, bleeding out, dying, horses running, bombs going off and shit. And he just goes out and goes, takes a drag of his cigar and says to his lieutenants, put them back in regiments, doesn't matter which ones, make new regiments, don't have these guys run around all day looking for their officers and their sergeants and so forth. Just start over. Like, so fucking brilliant. Like at the maximum freak show. Like, what do we do? This is what we have to do, people. Because this is what this is all about. The terror, the oil, the Epstein, they eat children, the AI fucking being run by Dave Kleinfeld. And if you don't know that joke, Google it and you'll see a guy that looks exactly like Alex Karp, played by Sean Penn. Is we need to calm the fuck down and do like a Leaves of Grass thing. That's how you're going to get through this. Yep. You've got to be mentally, physically, spiritually in shape. I don't aggrandize this stuff to like constantly just. I do it so you wake up. Like, how many fucking times have you heard me say if we attack Iran, oil's going to go to 150? It's 150. So if you've been followed me for some time, you're like, yeah, I think he said that like 3 years ago. And then he said everything was going to run on Ethereum rails, and like Russia and China is like running on Ethereum. All right, so let's pay some bills here. I think it was last week or the week before, I did a presentation on like a regenerative ag fund that would be tokenized. That's the tokenization part is the easy part. And I sent it to a brilliant woman who's a recent retiree from the University of Maryland. She's like my favorite person in the whole world of agriculture. And she was a professor. And she sent me back this 4 paragraphs of, I think she said, how did she say it? Like, some nice thoughts, but I'm going to be harsh. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. So I went back in yesterday afternoon and I instead of making something that's like to show to investors, I made something that's like academic. Okay. And I will post it for subscribers. I'm going to tell you something, Linda. This is worth $9.95 a month. Okay. So I sat there for 2 hours with Manus AI and massaged everything. And I said, what about this? What about this? What about this? And we made more of an academic paper. And it's specific. I took the sheep out of it. Obviously, I want to put sheep in because I know that world very well. But a sheep and a cow is the same thing. One's 5 times bigger than the other. Otherwise, they're exactly the same. And I said, look at the price, look at what's happened in the Persian Gulf. And it picked up on that. It didn't even say, what do you mean the Persian? It like completely locked on to that. The fertilizer not coming out. The price of urea, the price of diesel fuel, the price of petrochemicals, the spray, the glyphosate, the whole thing. Look at the price of land. Again, I stayed focused on Minnesota because Minnesota is sort of interesting to me because it's cold as balls, but it's like very fertile. And I said, do the pricing based on the upper Midwest of calves, female calves, to bred heifers. And it went through that like 5 minutes, it came back out. And like, it was almost like having a conversation with somebody. And this is the problem of AI, right? You start to think of it like it's your dog. And it was like, yes, this completely cash flows. And the price of how did it say it? The unpredictable price of fertilizer makes this a very compelling argument, something like that. That's going to be up. And this is the kind of shit I want to provide for you if you're subscribing. I mean, I get a little edgy on here and do the Linda finger and you say Netanyahu's dead and, have fun and try to attract people. But this subscription is for people who really want to like get grounded and know like, okay, like I can watch Tucker Carlson all day, but nobody ever tells me what to do. So we're trying to tell you what to do. And this is to build a fund. Now, just to run the numbers with you, the the price of corn right now is on marginal land. I'll show you what marginal land looks like. That's marginal land. In other words, can they grow corn here? Of course, but it's steep. The soil's shallow. We have about the same growing season as upstate New York and Vermont because we're elevated here. And yeah, in a good year, you make a little bit of money. And in the bad years, you just sort of break even. So Manus took all this and crunched it and said, this is a real significant, because the last thing I asked it, I said, could we pay investors 8% and allow, and this isn't the final calculation, but just go with it. Could we pay investors 8%, maintain ownership of the cattle, and have the farmer make the rest of the money? And it said, absolutely. It said, absolutely. And what I'm getting at is, like, in the midst of all this, an hour ago or whatever, 45 minutes ago, like, what do you want to own right now? Like, what are your reserves? What do you feel comfortable with? Because I said to my dad, I said, Dad, 2 or 3 years, you could be selling bred ewes, female sheep, for $1,000. They're like $350, $400 right now. You put in all these added inputs, diesel fuel, high tensile wire, fence posts, lime, fertilizer, the whole package of all the stuff that it takes to operate in the agricultural space. You could be selling used for like $800-900. So the thought process is not only could you get this reasonable cash flow of 8%, but you have an underlying asset that actually thrives in a inflationary situation. So we cordially ask you to think about subscribing, because there's more to come, people. There's more to come on the investment in the world of investment, in the world of, like, what do I do with my 401k? Like, what are the other options? My guy tells me everything's going to be fine. They just signed some bullshit paper with the Europeans and they're going to open the Straits of Hormuz. And this is going to go on for 6 or 12 or 18 months. It's probably going to go on until something very, very terrible happens. I don't know what that is, but we're not on the winning side of this. So check in tomorrow at noon Eastern, and we'll do theocracy and technology. Thanks.